Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Art After Hours. I'm Shauna Robson with Creating Space Coastal, and in this video, I will be talking about how to see patterns in nature, especially with animals. And the journal prompt is, if you could be any animal, what would it be and why? And so we are going to take our spirit animal and we're going to do tangle patterns that are inspired by other animals' patterns. So, and mine was a dolphin. So if you want to see how we go about this, stay tuned and enjoy. All right, so the journal prompt for today was, if you could be any animal, what would it be and why? So if you're doing a written journal prompt, you could do that. And the image that'll go along with that is to draw the animal and then use some tangle patterns to fill it in. But we're going to try out creating some tangle patterns out of real animal prints. So I wanted to share some of the sources that I use and some ways you can look for the animal prints. And then I would say you can maybe pick 4 that you would like to use for your animal. And I will, after I show you these ones, I'm going to actually post up on, I'll share a screen that's going to have a whole screen full of animal prints. If you don't want to search for it on your own computer and you want to look at it there, I'll put that up, and then we can take a few minutes to go ahead and create some things, and then we'll share what we have, and then we'll draw our animal. Okay, so one of the things you can use, as any of the field guides that are out there are great sources for images of animals. Now this one's an underwater, and in this particular one, they have real photographs of animals. And since my spirit animal, I just like to call it spirit animal. I never really went through a process figuring out if that's my spirit animal, but I feel like it is because they're very playful and they love water, and a number of, and they like to, well, the biggest thing is they're very playful. And they're intelligent, and I like to think of myself as intelligent, and they communicate, they talk a lot. So that's really fitting. And they like to jump around, and I love to dance. So I kind of think of them as my spirit animal. Otherwise, it'd be a mermaid, which don't exist. So I have to go with something that exists. But anyway, so I might look in some of these underwater creatures for inspiration, since I'm doing an underwater creature, because dolphins don't have a lot of texture, but we'll talk about more about that in a little bit. The other thing is, some of these field guides are actually art work, which are great if you're trying to learn how to draw a specific animal. You can use these because they're professional renderings of the animal rather than the real picture. So they'll give you some tips of how other artists interpreted a real life animal, which sometimes is easier to start with than an original picture of an animal. So this is one on birds, for example. But birds have lots of different patterns and textures. I mean, here's just a few. You can see, look at all of those fun, yummy textures that we can look at for patterns. So we're going to be looking at them like a tangle pattern. All right, then another one that's great is if you have any of those wildlife calendars. These are, my parents get these World Wildlife Fund calendars. So these are great sources. And what I'd like to do is take a magnifying glass, and I just pick a spot and only look through the magnifying glass, because if I look at the whole animal, I'm getting distracted by the whole shape of it, and I don't want to look at the shape of the animal. I want to only find a fun texture. So if I zoom in, I can just look at the texture. I'm not as distracted by the whole animal, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's an interesting pattern. I could even use a specific pattern that that's created by some folds, or maybe the eye. Maybe the eye is an interesting shape. Maybe these tusks give me some inspiration. So look around the animal and see if there's something, maybe the way the ears, the edges of the ears might be an inspiration for a pattern. So it doesn't have to be an actual, tiger print. They don't have to have an actual pattern of them. You can just find elements in them. Like maybe here it might be these horns, the horn shape, creating several and doing a repeated pattern on these horn shapes. I'm going to try to find something in each of these. Now here, there's some really cool texture in the feathers because these are like micro feathers, so those might be fun. I could also maybe use the shape, this shape right here of the beak, that light color, maybe that's a cool shape. Oh my gosh, he's so cute. The little eyeball is really cute. The little beak makes a little interesting shape. So I can find something on everything. Maybe it's just the shape of this, the eye, the dark part of the eye. That's an interesting little, almost like a heart shape. Maybe the nose. Maybe the nose has a fun shape. It's a little harder on just, you know, blank. Oh, this little pad is really cute. That might be something. It's hard when it's just one color fur and, you know, but you can look and see if you find something. Here, for example, if I just focus right on these feathers on the neck, those give an interesting pattern shape that I can use. Or these feathers right here. So there's always something, even the eyeball. Eyeball is like a little, you know, round circle, like a little target, kind of. The feet. Now this guy has lots of fun patterns to choose from. It could be this pattern, which I've used in some of my turtles. I mean, this cool pattern here, another pattern here. There's this pattern. I mean, they're all a little different on the one guy. And there's this pattern over here. You can make the pattern any size you want. We're not trying to make it realistic. We're just trying to be inspired. That's the thing to remember. Here's another turtle with completely different patterns. That's fun. Now this guy, we've got this horn shape is interesting. And he's got a lot of texture around his mouth. Maybe his nostrils inspiring. Or that eyeball. Now just practicing this type of exercise can help you if you do want to do a realistic rendering of an animal. Just practicing some of these textures will allow you to be able to make the real rendering of it later on. Even just the way the color change is, you know, from the mud, wet versus dry, is an interesting pattern. Maybe there's some interesting pattern within that. So again, we already looked at the elephant. Now this, of course, is a great pattern. And when we just look closely, I mean, if we think of that as a tangle pattern, that's basically just a bunch of circles. Well, they're my circles because my circles are never circular. They're never very precise. They're more, you know, oblong and, you know, misshapen. So this is the perfect, you know, I could do that. I could handle that. Some of them are stuck clumped together. There's little small ones in between. Really just zooming in on it and analyzing, what is this pattern made of? We have some interesting little like tear lines. Those could be a pattern. Let's see, maybe his nose might have an interesting pattern, or his ears. Ears have a little kind of a triangular look there. Even somehow this fur lays. like I said, it's always a little trickier on like, you know, one color fur, but it's still doable. I'm gonna knock my water bottle off onto my, okay, tigers again have some great patterns to look at. So don't think of it as a tiger, just think of it as a tangle pattern. All you're doing is filling in that shape with black. And then it's not so intimidating. There's some really cool little like lines of circles along the mouth. That's really a cool pattern right there. Even these little hairs for fun. Maybe something on his chin. Let me come down a little bit. So you see where I'm headed here. Because when we look at the whole thing, it can be intimidating. But when we break it down into just a small area and just the basic shapes. Now you could even take a pencil and trace along those shapes first, just to kind of get your, you know, get your muscle memory started. You could even make these parts dark and then have the spaces between light if you wanted. I mean, these are just to be an inspiration, so you can change it up however you want. Those little toes. I mean, animals are just, I love animals. They're so adorable. This guy, I mean, look at that hairdo. It almost looks like he braided his hair and took it out of the braid. It's got like this little weave to it, like a little Rasta weave. And then look at this pattern here. That's fascinating. Those lines in there. That could be something. Now he's fascinating too. He's got lots of patterns. Now these are interesting because look at how there's a little dot inside each of these. These little, and they're not really like any particular shape. They're sort of cuboid, but not really. And then they have little, like they're white, but they have little black dots in them. So that's interesting. And then his teeth, those would be a fun shape. The eyeball, I mean, look at that. That's really fun. That kind of reminds me of the one I did not too long ago in my Tangle book. Actually, I didn't intend it to be, but it looks kind of like that eye. And even just, oh, there's a little white, you know, glint there. So fun stuff. All right. As you can see, I could spend all night playing with that, but oh, look at this nose. I have to show this. If I show that, it looks like a whole nose, doesn't it? But it's actually one side of one nose. I have to pull it out. It's actually just one side of a nose. So it's like there's two noses. I would have never noticed that if I just looked at this whole thing. By zooming in, we can examine some shapes that we didn't know were there by just looking at the whole picture. He's even more, he looks more braided. All right, so you get where I'm going with this. Now I'm going to show you some online ways to search. So all I did here is go to Google and search animal patterns, images. And all of these choices came up. I could choose nature. I could choose printable if I want it to be more cartoon. If I'm trying to do maybe the outline, if I want them to print that. I could do real. I could do simple variations. I could even look at other drawings to get inspiration from someone else and see how they interpret the pattern. So let's look at some of these choices. So here, these are all real images of some animals. And look at all of those patterns to choose from. I mean, there's an endless supply. I don't know what's going on here. but I think that's like a oh, okay, wait, I have to show this. They did a doodle on an illustration and on a like real picture. How fun is that? Okay, that's going to be something else I'm going to do someday.
Wow.
I've never seen that before. How fun is that? They must have done it digitally though. I think this was done, yeah, it looks like they did it digitally because they actually were able to cover that. But I know you could do that with markers too. Okay, well, that's not what we're doing today, but that's really cool. Okay, so I'm going to go back one. Oops, I'm going to go back a couple to get back to my main one. There we go. Okay, because I wanted to also show you like what simple search looks like. So this is looking at what other people have interpreted some animal prints as. And these might be a little bit easier to follow because they look like a tangle pattern. So if you want, if it's too complicated, you can always search, you know, a specific, say, snake skin pattern, and then you'll be able to find some options that are the right level for you. You'll also be able to find some outline prints. So if you wanted to trace something, or if you want to just print it off and then do your patterns inside, you can certainly do that as well. I'm just going to leave those up on the screen if you want to use those. Otherwise, use your own. And then let's just take a few minutes to work out a couple prints, like maybe up to like maybe 4. Try to come up with 4 animal prints from either ones that you have or what I have on the screen.
Shauna, can you show what you're drawing?
Oh, of course.
Are we also to come up with a shape of an animal that we're going to put these in?
Yes, we're going to work on that in a minute. And I'll talk about some tips how to do that. But right now we're just creating some tangle patterns that we might want to use for our project. And then once I draw it, I'll show you what it is. And talk a little bit about drawing the animal shape. I do have this book that is called Animal Art, and I took off the dust cover, so I don't know what that looks like, but it's by Lee J. Ames, and I think it's designed for for children. So it's real simple. And I just want to show you how simple it is to just get an animal shape. You don't have to make it complex. Just start with basic shapes. You could make with pencils, you could make the basic shapes, whatever it is. So if it's just look at the general body shape and then kind of draw sort of an oval, and then a little circle, and then a triangle, and another triangle. So all animals are just made up of a variety of basic shapes. And if we just do it general, I mean, we don't have to do all this detail. It can be it can be really literally a stick figure. Last week we talked about using stencils, using those tools. However, I do encourage you to try to let go of the ideas I can't draw, because you can, as long as you just have the expectations of your level. So if you don't feel like you're a strong drawer, then just try, just see what happens, because you might surprise yourself. I think you will. I think you will surprise yourself. We don't have to make it even look like what it is. Just make it as close as you can. Maybe you can find a photo online that you like, that you're inspired by, that you can use as the general shape to get an idea. And in this case, if I was just going to try to do it myself without any guidance, sometimes it's helpful to think about the sort of the structure of it, the skeleton of it. So if I say, okay, a dolphin, I'm thinking of it kind of going like this, right? So that can be the center line of it. So I kind of know where it's going. So I'm going to do my dolphin now in my journal. That was a little practice dolphin, just to show you how I generally do a freehand. And the nice thing about it is you can do it in pencil, and you don't have to worry about if you make a mistake, because you can just erase it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me for another episode of Healing Our After Hours. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you find this content helpful. Thank you so much. And as always, happy creating. Bye.